listening to Rated RX. Your dose for the day.
Zay, why wasn't Tinkerbell allowed in the anticoagulation clinic?
She had too much warfarin dust on her wings.
Because they have a pixie ban.
Oh.
Much better than warfarin. Much better.
Okay. Better drug, too. There you go. The more you know.
A pixie ban.
All right. This is one of those episodes that might make you a little uncomfortable, but it could genuinely save a life. And not a human life this time, but a pet's life. This is the number one dosing mistake that could kill your pet. And the scariest part is, it's also one of the easiest mistakes for you to catch. Before you give your dog or cat their next pill, we're going to tell you a real story about a medication error that ended in a tragedy. And then we'll show you exactly what to look for on the label so it'll never happen to your pet. And this isn't about blaming vets or pharmacists. This is about empowering pet owners, because when it comes to medications, you're the last line of defense.
Yeah, and I want to be super clear and upfront. This isn't rare. This isn't some wild 1 in a million thing. These errors happen way more often than people realize.
And what's scary is how small the mistake can be. Like 3 letters. That's it.
So let me tell you a story that comes from a real documented FDA case file. I'm Sam, here with the Rated RX podcast, affiliate of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, here with Robbie and Xavier, and we're talking about veterinary medicine. So this story is a dog that is diagnosed with an illness that requires a chemotherapy drug called Leukerin, or chlorambucil, as we'd usually see. The vet doses everything right, correct diagnosis, correct medication, correct dose, and the prescription is written as give 2 milligrams SID for 10 days. The owner leaves the clinic relieved, they follow the label exactly, and within days, their dog becomes critically ill. Despite aggressive care, the dog passes away.
And that's the gut punch part. The owner didn't mess up. They didn't skip a dose. They didn't take an extra dose. They did exactly what the bottle said.
Which means the system failed somewhere in between.
Exactly. And the failure was a tiny 3-letter abbreviation, SID. And in veterinary medicine, SID means once daily. But here's the problem. Most human pharmacies don't use SID.
Yeah. In human pharmacy, we're trained with QD for daily, BID twice daily, TID 3, QID 4. But SID isn't part of everyday workflow. And to be frank, I haven't even heard about it until talking about this case.
Right. So when a pharmacist sees SID, like especially if it's handwritten, we'll automatically think they meant QID or TID, and we'll autocorrect it to something familiar.
And in this case, the SID was interpreted as BID, which Robbie told us was twice daily. So the label told the owner to give the drug twice a day instead of once. They doubled the dose every day. And for a drug with precise dosing, that is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and Leukerin isn't forgiving. That's non-antibiotic where you might get some GI upset. That's like some serious bone marrow suppression stuff right there that could happen.
Yeah, and this is why abbreviations are such a problem and why we always call your doctor to double check. The FDA literally lists abbreviations that are confusing and that may lead to medication errors.
And to be clear, this exact SID to BID mix-up has caused overdoses multiple times. It is something that comes up with the FDA, comes up on review and errors that happen. So, it wasn't this one vet or one pharmacist. It's a common thing that happens. It wasn't a fluke. So people ask, how does that even happen? And that kind of gap between veterinary medicine and human medicine is kind of what sparks that error.
Yeah, and vet offices often use paper scripts. They fax orders or sometimes use older software. Community pharmacies, as we know, are super slammed, short-staffed. phones constantly ringing, lines out the door. They got to deal with vaccines, insurance issues, MTMs, district manager down their throat that has no idea what's going on in the pharmacy store. So it's just a lot to deal with.
Yeah, and pharmacists, we're mostly trained to dose, 150 to 200-pound adults. Some of us are trained for kids, and then some adults are bigger than 200 pounds, so we know how to do those as well. But a dose that looks reasonable for a human may be catastrophic for a 12-pound dog.
And that's why this matters so much, because you know your pet and you know their size and you know when they seem off.
And if you ever look at a label and think, this feels like a lot, trust your instinct on that one because it might very well be.
I know our pharmacy had something similar to this, same medication, Chlorambucil, to where the script was written correctly. We had transcribed it correctly, but either communication between us and the owner or just the owner not realizing what the label said. It was a once weekly dosing of the medication, and the owner was given it once a day. The label said it correctly once a week, and that's what the vet had ordered. And the clinic had called up and was concerned because I'm sure that they were seeing all these immunosuppressant labs coming back and thought we had made it wrong. In our case, we were compounding it. So they thought we had maybe done a decimal A or something that was off and wanted to get tested. And then after a little time, the clinic called us back and they realized that the owner was given it once a day when the label said once a week. Thankfully, that canine was fine, ended up recovering, but it was definitely a situation where it could have been fatal. So I mentioned the decimal errors, which was something that the clinic might have thought we had, and that's another thing that gives pharmacy nightmares.
Yeah, the rule is to always lead with 0, but never follow with 1. It really annoys me when I see other people put a 0 behind it, and I'm like, take that off. Someone can mistake that and have the wrong dose, so I get annoyed.
Yeah, if the dose is written as 0.5 milligrams instead of 0.5 milligrams, that's a decimal that can disappear. So now you've got 5 milligrams, 10 times the dose.
Yeah, and the opposite, which I see a lot, is when they do 5.0 milligrams and they add that 0. You don't need that 0. You just want 5 milligrams. That can be smudged off easily, and it can be confused as 50 milligrams. So that's the one I see a lot in my job with some pharmacists, but I always go back and delete it
That trailing 0.
if I can
Okay.
catch it.
Yeah, those are tenfold errors. I had a call today of someone calling in a dosing and they said 0.05 as the dose. And then I wrote it down as 0.05 because obviously, you have the leading 0 as anyone should. And then when I read it back, she was like, no. It's not, whatever, like 0.05. And then she did it correctly, like 0.5, but she still didn't put the leading 0. I was like, okay, so you want 0.5. And it's like, yeah, okay. We're on the same page now. We're on the same page, but
just making sure, triple check.
Just that what I see is a hard time with that leading 0. A lot of people just go point, whatever, 0.5, 0.25, 0.25. This next one here, unit mix-ups, that one can be even worse.
Yeah, definitely. Micrograms, which is mcg, can be confused as milligrams sometimes, which is just mg. And that's 1,000-fold difference between the two of those.
Yeah, don't forget insulin errors too. The U for units. If that looks like a 0, now you got 10 times the dose instead of 1.
And, for pets, the very low insulin doses, us retail pharmacies or whatever, you're not used to seeing, as we were talking about before, something for a 10-pound, 20-pound pet, where you're doing 1 unit insulin doses. And, people are used to seeing human doses and like, oh, that's 10 units. But, it's very small pets. And these aren't theoretical. They can be fatal errors with those. Quick pause. If you're ever looked at a prescription label for your pet and felt confused or nervous, you're not alone. Drop a comment or send us a message with your experience. And if this kind of behind-the-scenes medication safety stuff is helpful, make sure you're subscribed. This is exactly why we're doing the show. So at the office, when you're going in, getting a diagnosis, here's how these steps and errors can be addressed from the start.
Number one, ask for real words, not abbreviations. Once daily, twice daily. Don't do SID.
And you always want to repeat the instructions back out loud. You'll be amazed at how many errors you can catch. We have them repeat it back to you because you may have misheard them or they may have accidentally misspoke.
And also make sure you're checking weight or making sure that vet has an updated weight for your pet. A lot of the dosing's weight-based, and a 5-pound difference can matter.
Now, let's say you're home, you got the bottle with you, everything is filled. Make sure you read that label every time. You might forget, even though you've given it 3 or 4 times. By that 5th time, you just might mess up and make a gross assumption. Read it every time.
And always double check it for any decimal places. Check the drug names, especially lookalike names like Serenia versus Covenia.
And please try not to dump your meds into a weekly pill organizer. It can be easy. It can be something to do. You see Robbie smirking over there. You know, that's what he does. There can be
Respect.
places for it, but meds, especially for pets that you might not be doing as often or short term, that bottle is a safety net for you to try to help you make sure you're dosing it correctly.
I do not put my dog's meds in a pill organizer. Okay.
You don't mix it with yours?
No, I do not. Now, I'll
One
say
for
this.
me, one for you.
I'll say this. Being
Like
that my
Scooby-Doo and
dog
Jack.
just had a bunch of health issues, which I don't know if there's time for this on this episode, but she came back with a very, very complicated medication regimen with doses that were taken 3 times a day on an empty stomach, then some with food, and then some in between. And it was very difficult. And as a pharmacist, I found it challenging to get the timing done correctly. And God only knows how much more difficult it would have been with someone else. My wife pulled out a whiteboard and she wanted to keep track of when a dose was given. And it was intense. Like we had maybe 5 or 6 different meds and it was just a lot to deal with.
We do see that where, more frequency dosing is just hard for owners to always be able to do that. And you're used to yourself. It's like, yeah, I just put this in my pocket, put it in a lunch bin, we're good to go. We can take that at lunch. Not as easy for someone at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And back to storing medications too, like we keep our Tums around. We have our chewable stuff, you just got to be careful too because these flavored chewable medications are basically dog candy. So just make sure you lock them up. My dog is always getting into stuff. So,
What kind of things do they eat, Robbie?
Well, so we got time for that or what? The first or second time?
Oh, maybe not that much time. It might not be easy, but try to keep them separate. Pets separate from yours. So especially if it's coming from a commercial tab, they're going to look just the same as yours. They probably are human meds, that you're giving to your dog or cat. So again, that label, that bottle, separate storage, it's going to help you reduce those risks of some sort of error. So again, you know your pet, how they act. You've known what they were before they started maybe getting sick. You can see them or anticipate what they're going to look like as they get better. You're seeing those weird symptoms when they're starting to med, that's a red flag, something to check into. Maybe it's fine. Maybe you call your pharmacist or your vet. As we mentioned, things like SID, BID, QID, like Robbie brought up, those are things that can be dangerous. Weird decimals, wrong names on bottles, making sure that, it is for your pet. They do have a right species. Sometimes it's just a typo and it's no big deal. Sometimes you are catching that error. And don't wait. If you are feeling something weird there, go ahead and call. Go ahead and check in. We want the meds to be right. It's for yourself. It's for your pet. We want everyone to get better.
And honestly, good pharmacists and vets want you to ask questions. I definitely had a lot of questions when I was going through this whole health thing with my dog, who I'll just say on the record ate a freaking towel and it was a whole mess to deal with. Second time she did it. But I got to say, I respect vets. My God, they're brilliant. They're absolutely smart. They knew a lot about the medications too. They just blew my mind. And honestly, I think that Sam, your wife is a vet. I think she's smarter than the 3 of us combined. I think you have to be really smart to be a vet because you got to know the animal. You got to know the drugs. I'm sure you got to know how they affect different animals differently. They do surgeries too. It's like they're like a catch-all, which is insane. So I was very impressed with the care that I got, and they literally saved my dog's life. So thank your vet.
Yes, sir. And remember, guys, you're not being difficult, asking these questions or taking the time to make sure you got everything figured out. You're being safe, and that's the most important thing.
So from now on, I want you guys to be a part of your pet's healthcare team. So making sure you're checking the frequencies, real words, not abbreviations. Check for those weird decimals, drug names. Remember, they can be similar, what they tell you and what the pharmacist tells you or what the label says. We want you to be empowered and want you to help your pets. You're the last line, and it's an important line. So if this episode helped you, share it with another pet owner. Please like and subscribe. We love the TikToks, the YouTubes, Facebooks, the Vine Reels, whenever Robbie gets those going. Thanks all for listening, and thank you for being the kind pet owner who pays attention. I'm Sam here with Robbie and Zay. Peace out.
Peace.
And keep your dogs away from towels. Bye.
Rated RX, you do